supreme law of the land, put the First Amendment as as one of our fundamental rights. It is something that shapes the very core of democracy. The right of every citizen to voice their opinions, express their thoughts to elected officials and fellow citizens, and believe what they choose gets to the very heart of what it means to be an American. As a licensed attorney, I swore to uphold an oath of these United States. I do not personally support the demonstrations of neo-Nazis, but I fully support the right to demonstrate. The First Amendment is absolute. It's a bright line rule that cannot and should not be subject to conditions or qualifiers. I believe this law that is proposed is reactionary and dangerous. Section 1D says that it will be a misdemeanor crime to obstruct the use of private facility or commercial activity or equipment. The bill then proposes to make it a felony to intentionally cause indirect or direct harm in excess of $1,000. In other words, it's now going to be a crime to assemble in front of a public or private building near any commercial activity. Even worse, it now proposes to elevate economic interests over the First Amendment. Corporations should not be entitled to override the rights of U.S. citizens. The right to peacefully assemble is guaranteed by the First Amendment. That does not contain qualifiers on where that peaceful assembly occurs. Trespass is a criminal law. So that's something that's already in place, and that's what's been being used against the many people that have gone out in these protests that we're talking about, Dakota Access. That's what this law is really aimed at. That's what I see it aimed at. It's reactionary. There's been a huge disruption of this community. There's been a huge disruption of, construction and businesses and all those things. These are people exercising their First Amendment rights to peacefully assemble and exercise free speech. They have that right, just like anybody else with any other opinion. You have the right to assemble. That's not controlled by where it happens to be. The issue of that you discussed, Chairman, of financial harm arising from this, that's addressed by trespass, right? So people are being prosecuted for standing in front of, whatever they happen to be standing in front of if they don't disperse.
Actually, I think the issue, though, is treating it differently under trespass law, which is a misdemeanor compared to other theft or criminal mischief laws, which set a financial barrier to a felony trigger. Theft is $1,000 as a felony. Criminal mischief is $2,000 as a felony. Trespass doesn't become a felony unless there's violence involved. And what I think the framers of the bill aren't, I don't think anybody's intent is to stop peaceful protest. I think their intent is to fix what they believe is a hole in the law, in that you can cause financial damage in the same manner as theft or criminal mischief. And under these laws, there's no felony trigger.
The people that have chained themselves to these machines are being charged with felonies. Numerous felony charges have been brought against every single person that's chained themselves to a piece of equipment. So I fail to understand how this bill does anything different than what already exists within the law, other than suppress people's constitutional rights to demonstrate. This is a slippery slope. That's what I titled this as. It is a slippery slope. I mean, you're essentially creating a felony for peacefully assembling. If you're causing a commercial, harm, or you're causing any type of, damages, you can get prosecuted by that under law. You can get prosecuted by that by getting charged with a felony for reckless endangerment, for doing things that, have whatever crime that you can be charged with, actually chaining yourself to a piece of equipment. That's already in the law. And people are already being charged with that. So I fail to see why this is needed.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Or Senator Lewis.
Mr. Chairman, Yantira, at what point does a person have the right to protest? Does a single individual have the right to go and protest? You have a business, and I just don't like your business, okay? So I have that right to go and protest. So you are in your store, and I go and chain myself to the outdoor knobs or the bars to get into your store. Do I have the right to do that?
You have the right to do that, just as you have the right, just as the state has the right to come in and remove you from that and then charge you with, the things they've been charging you with under the law, which is, reckless endangerment or criminal trespass if you refuse to move.
Okay. So any single person can go and do this. Now, if it gets to be many people, at what point does it become the difference between a peaceful protest and a violent one?
The difference between a peaceful demonstration and violence is simply that. People doing violent things, so trying to harm others. In none of the the demonstrations that I've seen to date have I seen someone attempting to harm another person. So, trying to punch a police officer or something like that. I haven't seen that. But if they do that, then that's punishable under law. I mean, it is.
Such
right?
that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may continue then. No, you blew me out of the water. I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, so I'll try to elaborate with a different example. I mean, I think the difference between a peaceful demonstration and a violent one is if you are peacefully assembling and, a rally or something like that, right, where you're talking to each other and you're all holding signs and you're stating whatever your, opinion happens to be, whether that's boundaries or whether that's
The topic doesn't matter.
The issue does not matter.
Right.
As long as you're doing that. When it becomes violent is when you are actually trying to harm persons.
Correct.
So harming a business, that's not a person. And if you do that, you still are punishable under the law because you are going to get removed if you refuse to leave after you're given a dispersal notice by a police officer. And if you're chained to it, then they're going to cut you out and they're going to charge you with the felony.
Mr. Chairman, one more question.
Sure.
Define harm to me. Does it have to be a physical harm or can it be a financial harm? Can it be an emotional harm?
Economic harm, yeah. There's extreme emotional harm. That's also in the criminal statutes, right? If you frighten someone to the point so pull a gun on them or something like that, that is punishable under the law. Economic harm is also a harm that's punishable under the law. It's under damages. That's under the damages statute. In this situation, the state has a right to law and order, and the state has a right to come in and prosecute people if they refuse to leave, if they are causing disorder. They have the right to do that. This law goes further than that. This law makes it a crime to even stand there in the first place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other testimony in opposition?